Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamritam gamaya avirmaedhi rudrayate dakshinangamukam te namam pahi nityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Let us sit quietly a few moments and meditate on the Supreme Spirit in any way we please. Bhadrang karnebhi shrunuyama devaha Bhadram pasyemakshbhiryajatraha Sthirairangaestuštuvagam sastanubhi Vyasema deva hitayad ayuhu. May we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we enjoy with strong limbs and bodies the life allotted to us. So the teachings of Sri Sarada Devi, who is known to the devotees of the Ramakrishna order and the Ramakrishna tradition as the Holy Mother. She was married to Sri Ramakrishna and actually was also his first disciple. So the story of her life, of course, is easily available in many books. So what we want to speak about today is not so much her life, but her teachings. She is accorded a role in our tradition that is equated with the Divine Mother, the divine principle, the divine background of the universe, the source of everything, the author of everything. She is considered in that realm. But we have to remember that this is the Vedanta society, and Vedanta has to be defined first before we can define any other concept or any other role for anyone to play. And the conclusion of Sri Ramakrishna at the end of his long period of extensive sadhana, fundamental realizations, at the end of his introduction into all the different aspects of the Hindu tradition by genuine teachers, and at the end of also having been introduced to Christianity, and also having been introduced to Islam by a Sufi mystic, having experienced all of these different approaches, and in the Hindu tradition, he experienced the whole gamut of many different approaches to the divine, many different concepts, from the highest non-dualistic levels of the Vedanta to the very traditional and very sacred aspects of the tradition that were elaborated in the lives of Krishna and Rama. Having experienced the whole gamut of these things, from all, you could say, all the major traditions, his conclusion was, they are all true. They're all paths leading to the ultimate goal of human existence. The second conclusion he came to is the most ancient of these traditions, the Vedantic tradition, from the Upanishads, which is the seers of the Upanishads were called rishis. A rishi is a word that denotes a seer of the fundamental, a seer of the essential reality. And we call those who have expressed their conclusions in the Upanishads, we call them rishis. Sri Ramakrishna's conclusion at the end of all his sadhanas is that they were all true, they all led to the ultimate reality. They were all valid paths. And he put a stamp of complete approval on the conclusions of the ancient rishis. We don't know who they were. We have a few names, like Yajnavalkya, Maitreya, and so forth. Their different names are given. But we don't know much about them. Some of them were kings, some of them were sat on thrones and themselves. Janaka was one such. And others were those who had led regular household lives and had retired at the end of their, in their retirement years, had retired to the forest and become adepts in the teachings of the sages. Now, what they concluded is embodied in the literature we call the Upanishads. Sri Ramakrishna's put his stamp of approval, utterly approved the wisdom of those ancient teachings. What he said was, what the ancient rishis taught will stand. That is a tremendous statement from someone who experienced the whole gamut of spiritual practice. But it is extremely important for us to have that validation, because the different expressions of spiritual realization that one hears in the different religions of the world, in the different sects of any one religion, there can be a lot of apparent, on the surface, things seem to be quite different. But at heart, Sri Ramakrishna verified, at heart, they're all speaking of the same reality. They have climbed the mountain of spiritual realization from different sides. But when they got to the top, they found they were all on the same mountain. So to have an expression of that, what is it that these sages found when they came to the top of the mountain? There, what is the consensus? What is the support? What is the reality that they had, what they discovered? It's expressed. The expression is in so many different ways that when we simply look at what they have said or what has been written, it all looks very difficult to understand because they seem to contradict in certain details. So we want to know what is the essence of it all. Sri Ramakrishna found that they were all valid, and the validity, the principle of that validity, he found very clearly expressed in the teachings of the ancient sages of the Upanishads. So he made this statement, what the ancient rishis said will stand. It will not be controverted. So when we talk here, the teachings of the Holy Mother, we must not imagine that this is one set of teachings that you follow in this way. That means you've diverged from a certain path and now you're going on a different route. That isn't the way it's understood. This is another approach to the top of the same mountain. So on that basis, we have to understand what did the ancient rishis. First of all, briefly, I'll mention a few ideas that the ancient rishis said. What is it that is going to stand the test, or has already stood the test of time? And of course, there are many sayings scattered throughout the Upanishads that can serve as examples for this. One of them is Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. Sarvam, all, Idam, all this, Khalu, indeed. What is all this indeed? What is our life? What is our experience? What is what we see, think of, feel, understand? What is all of this? It is given this name, Brahman. And then what is Brahman? One, you could say it is all God. You could use the word God if you don't put too much detail that some, each different religion puts on it. What is the general understanding of God? That is one way of approaching this idea. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. That means that the reality here is not many. Neha na nasti kinchana. Na iha, here. Na, multiplicity. Na asti, does not exist. Kinchana, in any sense. That is a profound statement. I mean, that is extremely difficult to understand. Everything that we see is variety. We don't see sameness. We only see variety. It is only when we go to sleep at night that in deep sleep, the variety disappears, but the essence does not. So at the heart of this variety, there is that reality. Yad iha taramutra, what is here, that is also there. Yadamutra tadanviha, what is there, meaning everywhere else, is also here. He mrityo samrityum apnoti, he goes from death to death, who, as it were, iva, sees multiplicity here. Now, all of us are going from death to death. We were born, we get old. When we get very, very old, we really don't want to continue. We've had enough, and we walk off the stage of this life. Some people think that that's the end, but we have, in our tradition, we say, yes, it's the end of this event, but we will manifest in another event. And thus we go life after life until what? Until we realize that there is no multiplicity here. Whether we live or die, the heart of all of our experience is that infinite reality. That's fine. Do I have to die to experience it? No, that is a statement they make. This can be experienced right now. And what is the way of doing it? 4 yogas, 4 paths. Through the paths of dedicated work, through the path of worship, the path of meditation, through devotion, all of these main paths one can achieve that insight. What is that insight? That there's no multiplicity here. That although we see our whole life is dependent on difference, but at the heart of all these differences, there is a common reality in every perception. Pratibodha viditam. In the Kena Upanishad, it is to be seen in every perception. That reality can be seen. How do you see it? That is yoga. You practice yoga in order to be able to look beyond the multiplicity, look within the multiplicity, and find that divinity, that reality. Now, that is at the heart of what Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi is teaching. It is that realization which Sri Ramakrishna said would stand or has stood and will stand the test of time. That is one of the effective ways that has been discovered in human history to express these truths. And that body of knowledge is called the Vedanta. That means it is the goal of the Vedas. It is the goal of the scriptures of Hinduism as well as of any other religion. So when we read the teachings of Holy Mother, as the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, as the teachings of Buddha and Jesus, we have to see at the heart of these teachings the fundamental reality that they are trying to demonstrate, that they're trying to put before us, that they're trying to urge us to experience. And that fundamental reality, each religion expresses it in its own way. In Vedanta, we express it in the sayings of the Upanishads, the sayings of the ancient sages. Now, the teachings of Holy Mother, she gave one advice. It was actually probably the last advice she ever gave. It was probably one of the last statements that she ever made. At the end of her life, she was extremely ill, and an old lady came to see her, a disciple of hers, who had also seen Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna, of course, had passed away in 1886. Holy Mother lived until 1920. So this was just before she passed away. She saw this lady who had come, and they were not allowed to go into her room because she was so weak and could not stand any disturbance, so they had to salute her from the door. And this lady did that. And Holy Mother saw her and said these words, which I cannot say it in the original Bengali, so I'll give the translation that is given. I say one thing. If you want peace, my child, see nobody's faults. See your own faults. Learn to make the world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The world is yours. One of our tendencies is to blame our circumstances, to blame events, to blame others, maybe also to blame ourselves. Why did we do this? Why did we not do that? That is all part of our going back and forth here and there, trying to discover the way to satisfaction. And her profound advice is, if you want peace, my child, don't see anybody's faults. See your own faults. Learn to make the world your own. Learn to make the world your own. No one is a stranger. The world is yours. Where is God? Everything that we see is filled with God. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. All of this is indeed Brahman, is God, is infinity, is that ultimate reality. Where do we find the real? Where do we find God? The answer is, where can you look and not see God? Every experience is an experience of God. Every manifestation is a manifestation of that infinite reality. There is, he who sees multiplicity here goes from death to death. That is what the Upanishad said. The point is that that reality which we are looking for, that satisfaction that we're all desperately searching for in so many different ways, in changing our physical circumstances, in doing this and doing that. We're looking in so many directions, asking for this, asking somebody else for that. Where is all of this? Where is that satisfaction going to come from? All of this is your own. This whole world, this whole experience is your own reality. These are all your relatives, your friends. Some friends mean sometimes you fight with them, sometimes you embrace them. But you see their essential inner worth. In the same sense, in this universe, there are things that are terrible and there are things that are marvelous. But at the heart of everything that is, whether it is terrible or whether it is wonderful, at the heart of everything, if one looks deep into everything, one finds only God. If you look deep into your own self, that is the whole meaning of meditation. You look deep within yourself, you try to feel the presence of God. That's one of the big practices that's highly advocated, to feel the presence of God. But what does it mean to feel the presence of God? Slowly one studies, one thinks, one experiences. But with that in mind, eventually one gets closer and closer. One realizes, yes, one begins to slowly understand a little bit of what is meant by that, to feel the presence, the reality, to feel the reality of God. This external reality is extremely temporary. All of these things that we see, they're here today, and in some time in the future, they won't be here. All the beings, all the friends and relatives, and all of our enemies, and as well as friends, they're here now, and they have their positive and negative effects on our life. But underneath everything that changes, there is a reality that does not change. That is what all the sages point to in their different ways. At the heart of everything that changes, there's a reality that does not change. That is one of the things that we mean by feeling the presence of God. Feeling within ourselves that which does not change. So that is the point here. Learn to make the world your own. No one is a stranger, because every perception is a perception of that reality. On the surface, it looks like a person or a thing or an event. But at heart, it is only the reality of God that we are facing. As we try to delve deeper into these realities, that is what we're hoping to achieve, more and more to feel the presence of that reality here, which has never been created, can never be destroyed, and at the same time is the essence at the heart of every experience. Now, there are many other statements that can be mentioned. Here's another thing she has said. In the course of time, one does not feel even the existence of God. After attaining enlightenment, one sees that gods and deities are all Maya. That means all temporary appearances. Everything comes into existence in time and disappears in time. Deities and such things really disappear at the dawn of enlightenment. The aspirant then realizes that the mother alone pervades the entire universe. All then becomes one. This is the simple truth. Now, what could she mean? That deities and such things really disappear at the dawn of enlightenment. The aspirant then realizes that the mother alone pervades the entire universe. These deities and these holy experiences that we have, as long as we are looking at them from the outside, they are experiences and they come and go. The essence is beyond that. That is the message. The essence is beyond the experience. When we become one with the essence, there's no multiplicity whatsoever. There's no dissatisfaction, there's no satisfaction. There's that total isness, which is total satisfaction, total cessation of craving, you could say, total cessation of our feeling the necessity of reaching something, because we're already the essence. The essence of that is already seen as being within our own experience. So, but many very practical advices are given. Everything depends on one's mind. Nothing can be achieved without purity of mind. It has been said that the aspirant may have received the grace of the Guru, he may have received the grace of the Lord and of the devotee of the Lord, but he comes to grief without the grace of one particular thing, and that one is his mind. The mind of the aspirant should be gracious to him. Then another said, "My child, this mind is just like a wild elephant. It races with the wind. Therefore, one should discriminate all the time. One should work hard for the realization of God." The disciple says, "I cannot concentrate my mind well during meditation. My mind is fickle and unsteady." The mother's reply, "Don't worry, restlessness is the nature of the mind. as it is of the eyes and ears. Practice regularly. The name of God is more powerful than the senses. Always think of the Lord who is looking after you. Don't be troubled about your lapses. See, that was the aspect. Do this, and then she gives some very powerful, very straight, very incisive advice. But then she's the mother of us all. Okay, if you can't do it, don't worry about it. By having devotion to the ideal itself, we travel beyond that. We're able to penetrate even the vagaries of the mind, even the vagaries of the senses or of circumstances. We can penetrate through that by that devotion to that ideal. Whatever is your ideal, whatever is the ultimate goal of life that you have formed for yourself, that you're concentrated on, steadfast devotion to that. She will put it as the Lord, as the name of God, as a prayer and all of that. You can define it in many different ways, but a steady devotion to what one is after will guarantee that we will reach it. That is one of her most powerful emphases. Whenever the mind goes after anything other than God, consider that as transient and surrender the mind at the sacred feet of the Lord. Somehow to keep the mind focused on that which is transcendental. You can say, well, I don't know the Lord. I don't know God. I don't know any of these things. What am I supposed to be concentrating on? You concentrate on your highest ideal of what you're trying to reach. And then the idea is, as our mind rises higher in the ability to do this, the purity of the goal also increases. In other words, your initial idea, say you want to have the feeling, have the presence, feel the presence of God, the presence of the reality of God. We'll have a certain idea of that. But as we approach that idea also evolves, that idea also grows. Eventually it will, that is what the scriptures then say, eventually it will become what it is that we're trying to reach. Because deep in our own selves, without even really knowing the details of it, we're only trying to reach the infinite and the eternal. That is all that we're ever after. You may put it in various temporary ways and temporary goals and different manifestations, all that you can put. But actually, as you come up to the temporary goal, you realize that that is a temporary goal, but at the same time you see a more distant and a higher goal beyond. There is we have our ashrama there at what we call the Shanti Ashrama in the San Antonio Valley near San Jose. And one thing is, you're looking at a mountain and you want to climb that mountain. You go across the valley and climb that mountain. It's not very high. But when you get to the top of it, I've never done it. This is only hearsay, but from people who have done it, they say when you get to the top of that, you find that's really not a very high point at all. It looks like the top from the bottom of the valley, but when you reach it, as you get close to it, you find, no, there's another hill that's much higher than that beyond it. So you have to go over that, down into the valley, back up to the higher one. And you see another hill that's still higher. So this is basically our condition in many ways. We're aiming for something which we think is very high, but when we get near it, we find that it's good, and it's fine, and it's wonderful that we did it, but that's not the end of the journey. We have to go beyond. We have to reach, because we then see that there's a higher ground behind it, and that is what we want to reach. Eventually, the idea is eventually you should reach the top of the mountain. So that's in a physical sense. But in a psychological sense also, that same idea prevails. Regarding the weakness of the mind, the Holy Mother said to a disciple, "Child," of course everyone was a child to her. She was literally the mother of everyone. "Child, this is the law of nature. Have you not noticed the full moon and the new moon? Likewise, the mind is sometimes dominated by good and sometimes by bad tendencies." Another disciple said, "Mother, my mind becomes restless now and then. It craves for enjoyments. That frightens me." "Mother, don't be afraid. I tell you that in this Kali Yuga, mental sin is no sin. Free your mind from all worries on this account. You need not be afraid." Disciple, "However I may try to remove evil thoughts, I do not succeed." Mother's answer, "This is the result of what you have done in your past life. Can one get rid of it by force? Cultivate good company, try to be good, and in time you will succeed." Then she says, "Pray to the Master. I too am here." That is another aspect. To her, the Master means Sri Ramakrishna. To her, that Sri Ramakrishna was the embodiment of all that. And in fact, we, in our worship services here, we say Sarada Devi Swarupaya Sri Ramakrishnaya Namaha. So we say Sarva Devas Devi Swarupa. That means that the essence of all these spiritual manifestations of different divinities, different aspects of the divinity, at the heart of that is that infinite reality which is embodied in Sri Ramakrishna. You can call it Brahman, you can call it Paramatman, you can give it so many different names. But a person who has realized that becomes one with that. Brahmaiva bhavati. So that means the person who has realized Brahman becomes Brahman. In other words, there is nothing in him but that supreme truth, that supreme existence which is given different names in different religions. But once one has experienced that, one becomes identified with that because that is the totality, that is the oneness, that is the infinity. So having experienced God, one manifests to others, that what one manifests to others is of a divine quality. That is the point. So she always identified Sri Ramakrishna with that. And so when she always emphasized praying to Sri Ramakrishna, meditating on Sri Ramakrishna, but the same thing would be said with reference to all the others who had become identified with that reality, that is Krishna and Rama. And Swami Vivekananda wrote this poem in which he explains that he who was Rama and he who was Krishna is now identified with Sri Ramakrishna. That is the point, that Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati, the knower of Brahman, the Brahmavid, becomes Brahman and becomes the one and the infinite and the eternal. Then you can give it any temporary name that you like. But the basic reality that is experienced by the sages is described as that same reality. And of course it's exemplified by climbing a mountain. And there is an example of that apparently on the island of Hawaii, in which there is a 6,000-foot mountain or so that acts as a barrier to the trade winds that come along the Pacific, so that the winds, as the winds rise on the mountain, they cool and they drop their moisture on one side, so that the other side of the mountain, the winds have lost their moisture, the other side of the mountain is dry. So on one side it's said to be almost like deserted or very dry. On the other side it's like a rainforest. Two people come up this mountain from these two sides. And of course, since they're modern people, they have cell phones, right? You can't do anything without a cell phone. Even on the tops of the Himalayas, they use cell phones. So these two people are moving up the side of the mountain. One of them is describing this very wet, slogging through heavy moisture, and the other one is in a deserted area. And they start arguing with each other. How can they both be right there on the same mountain? How could it be so different? That is the way we normally deal with each other in this world. No, this person is wrong, absolutely wrong. How could it be like that? But as they climbed, they found that on the wet side it was becoming drier. On a dry side, clouds were appearing. When they finally reached the top of the mountain, they found they're on the same mountain. So this is one analogy for the difference of spiritual expression and the difference of religions, that you may call one thing by one name, somebody else may call it by another name, but they're not two different things. There's only one reality here, but it is called differently by different people. One of the basic statements of Vedanta is Ekam Sat, truth. Ekam, one. Sat, existence. That which exists, that which is at the heart of existence, is one, is the same, is not, there are no two. Vipra, that means wise people. Vipra bahudha in many ways. Vadanti, describe it in many ways. Truth is one, but sages call it by different names. Now, the Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna was the embodiment of all gods and goddesses. Sarada Devi Sarupaya Sri Ramakrishna Namaha. We generally follow that tradition. It doesn't mean that these other manifestations are not accepted or are only partially right or are wrong. That's not the point. You give it one name, but you refer to, by implication, to all of them. So these were some of her teachings. But there are some very extraordinary things also. For instance, here's another quote. In the course of time, one does not feel even the existence of God. After attaining enlightenment, one sees that God's gods plural, and deities are all Maya. That means all appearances. Everything comes into existence in time and disappears in time. Deities and such things really disappear at the dawn of enlightenment. Then you could say, well, what happens? What do you experience on enlightenment? Deities and such things really disappear at the dawn of enlightenment. The aspirant then realizes that the mother alone pervades the entire universe. All then becomes one. This is the simple truth. There are not two anywhere. Aham Brahmasmi, I am that reality, I am Brahman, is one of the Mahavakyas of the Upanishads. What is it? We think of ourselves as bodies and minds, having certain outlook, certain wishes, certain hopes, aspirations, certain regrets, certain failings, and certain virtues. That is from the standpoint where we are now. When we begin to see that reality, the essence of things is one, not two. Then, as she says, the aspirant then realizes that the mother alone pervades the entire universe. Really, there is nothing but spirituality. Neha na nasti kinchana, again from the Upanishad. This multiplicity does not exist in the slightest. Yad iha taramutra, what is iha here? That is also there. It is the same that we see different things in different places. But really, multiplicity does not exist. That divine reality alone pervades everything. So she says, the aspirant then realizes that the mother alone, the infinite, the eternal, the all-nourishing mother, the aspirant then realizes that the mother alone pervades the entire universe. All then becomes one. This is the simple truth. Neha na nasti kinchana, there is no multiplicity anywhere. There is only the one. That is what we try to reach in meditation. That is what we try to reach in spiritual practice. But we take all these steps. We accept the mother, we accept the different forms of divinity if we like, if that's part of our spiritual practice. We accept all of these. These are all helps in getting where we want to go. But once in a while, at least, we should express that reality that we ultimately want to reach. And that reality she expresses this way. The aspirant then realizes that the mother alone pervades the entire universe. All then becomes one. This is the simple truth. There are not many, as the Upanishad said, Neha nanasti kinsha. Nana does not exist. Multiplicity does not really exist. It appears to exist. But really speaking, it is the mother alone. It is God alone. The subject for next Sunday, which is Easter, is the Easter message. This talk will be given by Swami Vedananda. On Sunday evenings, Swami Vedananda holds an online class at 6 p.m. on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website's homepage, as well as in the monthly email bulletin. On Wednesday evenings, we have Vespers with meditation at 7:30 p.m. in this auditorium. On Friday evening, Swami Vedananda holds a scripture class at the Old Temple at 7:30 p.m. Please use the auditorium entrance on Filbert Street. The current text for study is the Bhagavad Gita. This class is also streamed on YouTube and on Facebook. At present, the bookshop and library remain closed, and childcare is still not currently available during lectures and worships. Your cooperation in being fully vaccinated, wearing a mask, and maintaining 6 feet of distance is greatly appreciated. If you would like to make an offering, a collection plate will be available on the cart at the door as you exit. There's also a mounted offering box near the auditorium door in the foyer. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all of our services. After the lecture, there will be a question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are welcome. Om Dhyau Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apo Shanti Roshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, peace is in heaven, peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. The herbs, the plants, and the trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May that infinite, universal peace enter our soul and being. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.